Words on Fire, Chapter 40. As we had hoped, the back of the church was abandoned, and my first thought was to tell the people inside that we had a way out. But before that thought was even finished, Lucas grabbed my arms and yanked me to the ground just in time as the soldiers who'd been here returned, grumbling about being assigned watch duty when the real action would happen up front. For now, there was no more shooting, so I hoped what I heard earlier were only warning shots intended to scatter the men with pitchforks. Though if those were warnings, I doubted that anyone had left. The men weren't only protecting their church now, they were also protecting their loved ones inside. Their actions were noble and brave and probably would end in tragedy. And now I had dragged Lucas into the middle of this, too. I wish none of us had been here, but we were. The air felt thick and seemed dark, as if death hovered nearby, waiting for his opportunity to collect more than his share for the day. Personification. Death said it's waiting for his opportunity to collect more. Anyway, Lucas began crawling on his hands and knees away from the soldiers who were still talking about how they would handle the situation if they were in charge. Grateful for the noise they were making among themselves, I followed Lucas until we were far enough away that we could hide in a patch of trees and hope to figure out a way to help. If we could draw the soldiers away, I said, even for a few minutes, we could get the people out. Too late, Lucas said. As the instant I finished speaking, the front church doors burst open and the people spilled out onto the church lawn, ready to fight. They have no weapons, I whispered to Lucas. They have no chance here. Then let's help them escape. Lucas darted forward, silently grabbing the arm of a girl near our age and pulled her toward me. I was directly behind him and took her hand and then motioned to her that we would be crouching low to the ground. She nodded and followed my lead, and I pointed out the patch of trees behind the church where I wanted her to go. The most dangerous part would be the low brick wall that surrounded the church. Her only choice was to slip over it. I hoped she was fast, and even then I hoped she'd be lucky. Others around us weren't so lucky. A man running right in front of Lucas was caught with a bullet. A fraction of a second's difference, and it would have been Lucas instead. But he had been encouraging people to get to the ground as well, and directing them in the same way that I was. I turned again to find Lucas, but whatever he had been doing a moment ago, now he was completely still. He was facing me, but staring at something or someone directly behind me, his eyes betraying the kind of horror that told me that I was in terrible trouble. At first I didn't understand why, not until Lucas said, "Spare her, father, let her go." It was never about her. I came to find you. I recognized the voice and closed my eyes, not daring to turn around, nor did I need to. Officer Rusakov was behind me, Lucas's father. Do you intend to arrest me? Lucas stepped closer. You should. I'm a book smuggler, father. Everything you worked to stop was everything I fought to achieve. I'm still fighting for it. I shook my head. Lucas, stop. Lucas? Now Rusakov crossed to where I could see him. He was still in his uniform, but it had been stripped of the decoration that he'd worn every other time our paths had crossed. I got the feeling he had come here as a father, not as a soldier. Lucas is your name now? It hadn't occurred to me that Lucas must have had a Russian name before this, but of course he had, and he would have changed it to keep people from knowing his background. That must have been part of the reason why Rusakov had wanted my help. Lucas didn't answer his father, but Rusakov walked closer to him, almost forgetting me. He said you were there that night when the village in Venska was burned. I saw you with this girl. I tried to get her to reveal your name, Lucas, so that I could find you. If you'd looked for me with the other Lithuanians, you would have found me. You're a Russian, half Russian, and I never even felt that much. I remember once seeing my friends reading a Lithuanian book, and when they'd realized that I'd seen it, they dropped the book and ran from me in fear. From me, father, simply because of the language in the book. I picked it up, determined to understand why those words were so dangerous to the Tsar. Do you know what it was? A simple fairy tale of a girl named Rue, Lucas said. Perhaps all of Lithuania is a fairy tale, an imagined place that refuses to acknowledge its position in the real world, Rusakov shouted. If Lithuania had a place in the real world, then it deserves its own language, its own culture, I said. We deserve our own books. Rusakov gestured to the soldiers and villagers behind us, still fighting. Then you deserve what will happen to all of you tonight. Freedom is never given as a gift. If you want it, then people will die for it. Why can't you just accept the occupation and live in peace with us? But before he could say anything more, a rifle fired into the air and the area went quiet. A soldier near to the front of the church shouted, Enough of this! Go to your knees if you want to live. Stay on your feet and you will be shot. Several people immediately obeyed the order, though more remained on their feet, either still trying to escape or worse, trying to fight back, using pitchforks against bayonets. It didn't help that those who had knelt were immediately assaulted by the soldiers, their cries for mercy returning with beatings on their backs or heads. One woman had fallen to her knees, her fists clutching the frostbitten grass, praying for a miracle from God that she was praying for a miracle from the God she was trying to defend. But a soldier yanked her to her feet by one arm, told her she was being arrested, and began leading her away. Even then I saw her lips still moving, still praying. Other soldiers continued to order the crowd to their knees. But why would they think anyone else would obey now, only to receive the same treatment? Get the people out of here, a soldier ordered. His men began herding those who were still on their feet down a hill away from the church. Halfway down, a woman slipped and might have been trampled if others nearby hadn't stopped to help her up, receiving beatings of their own as repayment for their mercy. We've got to help them, Lucas's tone now deepened, and then I knew he had been addressing his father. I'm going to help them, and you will not stop me. You know this is wrong. Rusakov hung his head. Then go, do what you must, but remember that I have no more authority among these soldiers. I cannot save you. Perhaps having no authority is the first step in saving yourself, Lucas said. Rusakov nodded grimly. Then I grabbed Lucas's arm and we began running down the hill to keep us ahead of where the people were still being forced to march away from the church. As we ran, I glanced back at Lucas. Tell me you still have some matches left? He began patting his pockets and withdrew his matchbox. Only a couple. Will that be enough? No, it wasn't. We had 4 smoke bombs, and now the best we would only be able to light 2 of them. I had always counted on using all 4, but 2 would have to be enough. We rounded a corner where a crooked wooden home offered Lucas some cover to hide. I took the matches from Lucas and then darted to the opposite side of the road, though there wasn't much here to protect me. Lucas would have to do most of the work. What's your plan? Lucas hissed. I shushed him. The Cossacks were still pushing the people closer to us. I had to concentrate. My timing had to be perfect. I hoped Lucas would know what to do when the right moment came. That was all I could do, to hope that he knew me well enough to guess what was in my head. This wasn't much of a plan, but with Lucas it had no chance to succeed. But without Lucas it had no chance to succeed. I did nothing while the first dozen people passed us by, each of them so terrified and distressed that they didn't even notice we were there. Then I crouched behind a willow tree and lit the first match, cursing under my breath as it was extinguished by the night air. Now at least 20 people had passed us, and the nearest soldier was only seconds away, driving the people forward like cattle. I pushed my back I pushed my back against the breeze and struck the match closer to my body, then immediately lit the smoke bomb that I had made with the salt pepper, hoping that I had read my father's instructions correctly. Instantly, thick gray smoke began pouring from it, and I tossed it into the center of the road, already choking on its fumes. Fire! Someone yelled. Keep going, a man's voice replied in Russian. The soldier who had been nearer to us on the road must have stopped just short of the smoke to push others forward. If there was a fire ahead, he obviously had no problem with my people having to face it. At the point of his bayonet, they were forced through the smoke, faces buried against their arms or nuzzled into their shirts or aprons. As soon as I saw each one of them come through, I'd grab them and pull them off the road with me and then tell them to run. On his side of the road, Lucas did the same. The smoke didn't last long, not nearly as long as I'd hoped, before the tendrils began to thin. If we had planned better, if we had enough matches for the other 3 smoke bombs we carried, if we had planned this all, we would have already been running away with the people that we'd saved, for I had no idea how visible I'd become. From behind me, a soldier's arm wrapped around my neck and began dragging me backward with a voice saying, "You'll pay for that." I kicked at the ground and beat at his arm, anything to force him to loosen his grip, but nothing worked. I had seen the man take me. I was sure he had, but he wouldn't be able to help me, nor should he. If he tried, he'd only share in whatever punishment I was about to receive. Before I knew it, the soldier had dragged me across a field and toward a river where I had heard other voices somewhere nearby. I couldn't see them, but I knew the other people were here. The other people here were in as much trouble as I was. The soldier pulled me into the river and threw me under the water, which was icy cold and deeper than it looked. His grip on my arm was like a vice, so I couldn't get away, nor could I stand. I turned my head against the current, hoping to get a few sips of air, but every draw brought more water into my lungs. Then I understood. That was the soldiers' intention. The people they had captured, the ones that we had failed to save, they were being drowned here, and I would be among them. Wow, that's the end of chapter 40.